The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Dan Slott, everyone's favorite creator, Dan Slott. Definitely a beloved member of this show's community. I'm sorry, I can't anymore. Look, I want to admit this out there, which will probably frustrate several of you. I don't have a big issue with Dan Slott. I mean, I know I shouldn't use the word big along with Dan Slott. It's okay. That's a cheap shot. That's a bloated cheap. No, okay. Dan Slott, his writing is not my favorite. But I mean, it's fine. I think I think his She-Hulk was overrated, for sure. Several people point to that as like their favorite run. I don't see that, but I don't have any major issue with Dan Slott on Spider-Man. Again, it's not my favorite run of Spider-Man by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't like the teases. I didn't like kind of some of the jackpot stuff. But if I think of like Spider Island, for example, that has a perfectly serviceable event. It's fine. For a Spider-Man, it's kind of what you want out of it. And then he did some okay stuff. He went to the Green Goblin maybe a little too often, but it's fine. I think it's okay. He did some things that definitely were creepy and bad. The whole Doc Ock in Spider-Man's body having sex with Mary Jane stuff, like I don't know. I mean, like that I say I don't know. That was wrong. But I didn't have a huge hatred for him. And keep in mind, when you're on a scale of like Tom King to Roger Stern, Dan Slott's in there. He's not high up on that list, but there's definitely worse. And as somebody who sells comics, Dan Slott did sell some comics. The challenge is when Dan Slott left Spider-Man in this kind of recent run, it's like now he's going to go do Iron Man and Fantastic Four. Definitely in Marvel's head was, hey, he's going to be our next Bendis, or that's what they had in mind. And unfortunately, turns out Slott is not super diligent on getting his scripts in. And by the way, this isn't a Perch secret. I mean, they said this out loud in the documentary video. Like you've got Brevoort in there, like Dan Slott does not turn the scripts on time and it gets easily distracted. Literally, the first joke in the little documentary with Dan Slott, the very first joke was him getting distracted by Twitter. So and like just kind of being bad at his job. And then it was meant to be played up for laughs, but when you're hearing from the other members of the creative team and they're like, yeah, it's Christmas time and I don't have my script yet. I sure would like to enjoy the holidays with my family, but Dan Slott's tweeting, so there's all those other things. But as a pure writer, if you search your heart, I suspect many of you will feel the same way. Some of you are going to go, hell no. But again, when we're in a Stephanie Williams, Tom King scale of writers, that's what I would say. Anyway, this mail is asking, but is Dan Slott's career over? And kind of like I was saying, he went to Fantastic Four and he went to Iron Man, and there's this definite thought that big things would happen, and it didn't. The sales didn't come in. The stories kind of meandered everywhere. They were very forgettable, and then they've now moved him back to Spider-Man, and he's back doing Spider-Man things. And unfortunately, I think that's bad for both him because he's kind of had to retreat back to the character he left to go do bigger things, and it's bad for like Zeb Wells and Spider because now they got the previous guy who wrote a lot of Spider-Man out writing Spider-Man again and kind of inferring at times that his Spider-Man stories are the more important ones. It's, anyway, it's peculiar. So, but let's get to this mail. It says, Dear Perch, with Dan Slott's return to the Superior Spider-Man and the new Spider-Boy book, both of which will probably last not more than 12 issues, I think the Superior Spider-Man is a limited series, is it not? Are they calling it an ongoing? I don't know. I've heard from people internal that it's a limited series, but sometimes Marvel confuses things, let's just say. Anyway, it feels like Slott is at the end stage of his career, the reliving his greatest hits and not putting out any new titles that what he wasn't already associated with beforehand. His Iron Man run didn't sell well because it was awful. And no one really cared about his FF. Marvel isn't likely to put him on Captain America. That is true. Marvel likes to put creators who match the characters. And, Dan Slott would have to reduce himself by 2/3 in order to be kind of in that zone. Sorry. So he just went back to Spider-Man and nobody really cared about it besides the spectator market for Spider-Boy. Oh, sorry, you said spectacular market for Spider-Boy. You know what? I said what I said. Sure, Spider-Boy is a new character, and if it lands well in the sales under Slott, assuming that Christos Gage isn't secretly writing it could lead to a revival of his career. Mark Waid was able to make a comeback with his return to DC, so anything is possible. But the thing with Waid's comeback is that he didn't return to The Flash, and he got put on different books like Shazam. Slott, at this point, is just typecast on Spider-Man, more specifically the whole Spider-Verse aspect of him. Slott isn't going to do the definitive story for Electro or the Looter that is that one story, like how DeMatteis did for Kraven. There's no real ambition in his return. But he did just get engaged, so at least he's got that going for him, unless he sells it to revive his career. He got engaged? I miss that. Good for him. Everybody needs love. You just need a big old fat world of love. That's what it's, sorry. Yeah, that's not fair. Good for him. Good. Maybe being married will remind him that characters can get married again, and we'll get that Spider-Man Mary Jane marriage back on the track. Does this mean if Dan Slott's getting married, does this mean he's no longer relevant or understandable by comic readers? Is that what that means? I'm not sure. Look, it's in terms of a career, it's usually not good when somebody has to go back to their title, and it usually doesn't end well. It does feel like the greatest hits, and a writer I like and respect quite a bit, Chris Claremont, when he returned back to the X-Men, it wasn't the same. He had some okay comics in that run for sure, but it just wasn't. It never hit the same high note that it did during his original very, very long run. I think that it's tough for a writer to go back to the character they're most associated with. And I think the real problem for Dan Slott is that he, as you said, he went to other characters. He went to FF, he went to Iron Man, and it just went nowhere. Like, it did not move any needles at all. The needles were flat. I didn't say fat. I said flat. The needles were flat, probably because they were flat. And sorry, but nothing evolved. And this is a challenge, I think, for this is a challenge for Dan Slott. Is he hasn't shown he can do a breakout big hit outside of Spider-Man. And the problem is the question starts to raise, and it's a legitimate question of, well, was it you or was it Spider-Man? And that's kind of the challenge I think he has. Is it feels more like if I put Dan Slott on a book that is already popular and doing well, if I put him on something that is going to sell well, whoever's name is on it, then Dan Slott can turn in a hit. But this isn't exactly a ringing endorsement for you as a comic writer. If you say, yeah, if you put this writer on things that are already going to be hugely popular, it will sell well. I guess it's better than, hey, if we put this writer on this comic, it will tank and destroy its sales. There's been some of those, but it's not good. It doesn't help. So I think, is his career over? No, I think, he'll have a long winding road of his career. Marvel seems happy to have him play in the Spider-Man books, and he can, move 50, 60,000 copies of a book, and they'll do some variants and some incentives and some other things with Spider-Boy to try and get that one moving. But overall, if he's going to have a evolving career, he's got to do something new. Like you said, Mark Waid is an interesting example because he kind of left the spotlight for a while, but he had a number of hits in a number of different areas. He has his Kingdom Come. He has his run on Cap, the Ron Garney Waid run. He's done a number of, he's done a number of things in his career that are notable across a lot of characters. So when he comes back and he does the World's Finest and the stuff that he's doing now, it just plays well. It feels like it plays like a good story. And Dan Slott, unfortunately, he has Spider-Man to turn to. And for a lot of comic writers, by the way, this is one reason why they don't like to necessarily do a long run, because they're afraid they're going to get typecast, and it is a risk. Chris Claremont has done other things. I actually liked his Fantastic Four run that he did, but he will be the X-Men guy forever. He's going to be, that's who he is. So it's a legitimate thing to watch out for, but the best way to protect yourself is kind of what Wade has done, what others have done. I mean, Jeff Johns, whether you love him or hate him, he had this. Of course, he's got a record for writing Green Lantern and being an architect there, but he also wrote a bunch of other things. He had his Brief Avengers comics over at Marvel, but he also did The Flash, and he was one of the architects for the New 52, and he did Justice League. I mean, he went around and did a lot of different books. And so as a result, you may remember him for Green Lantern, but he's got plenty of other things, under his belt that sold well. And Dan Slott can't see his belt. So that's really the problem. All right, this last cheap shot I'll take. That lowers the class of this channel for sure. We shouldn't do that. Anyway, thank you very much. Do you think Dan Slott's career is over? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course. And thanks for listening.